Welcome, everyone, to the Great Womb Awakening 2, where women across the globe are deepening their understanding of the most powerful shamanic tool on the planet, the female body. I'm your host, Kathy Forrest, founder of Celestial Forest Institute, and it is my great pleasure to bring you today Miss Alexandra Pope. Welcome, Alexandra.
Thank you very much, Kathy. I feel just joy in my being, just from the brief connection we've had before we
Yeah,
came onto this call. Yeah, it's a pleasure to talk to you.
sweet.
Mm.
Alexandra is the co-founder of Red School and co-author of the iconic and hugely celebrated book From Hay House, Wild Power. Discover the magic of the menstrual cycle and awaken the feminine path to power. Together with her colleague and co-author, Johnny Hugo Wolitzer, she is pioneering a new emerging field of menstruality, creating a new lexicon and approach to women's health and well-being, creativity and leadership, and spiritual life based on the power of our menstruality consciousness. She brings over 35 years of experience teaching worldwide on the psycho-spiritual process of maturation that unfolds from menarche to menopause and beyond, and is committed to training the menstruality leaders of the future. That just gives me chills even when I say it. So I'm loving this topic. We were speaking before we started recording about how powerful this topic is. Menopause, the great awakener.
Mm.
So let's just dive in. Why do you call menopause the great awakener?
Because menopause is this extraordinary moment when the veils part and we see things in the way we have never seen them before. We s- we we suddenly we're exposed
Mhm.
to a deeper and kind of wider consciousness. It is, for me, ultimately, it's this huge spiritual awakening. So it's like our spiritual perceptors are all sort of blasted open.
Right?
But to be able to, I suppose, embody or channel or manage that spiritual awakening really requires something within our being. So it doesn't feel like, oh, wow, I'm going through a spiritual awakening. It usually announces itself as, holy shit, what the is going on?
Yeah.
It's like suddenly, nothing about one's life seems kind of right anymore.
Mhm.
And it will often feel like the ground has gone from under us, because in our 40s we should be building a really sure sense of identity and a feeling of like, yeah, I know who I am, I'm nailing it, I'm nailing it in the world. There should really be a wonderful sense of agency and like you're kind of on top of everything, and your body, is on side.
Mhm.
And then suddenly, well, not so suddenly, it can be sort of gradual too, but there that sense of surety and that sense of really knowing what's what about your life shifts and gives away, and that's a sign that you are stepping into this expansion. And basically, I call it the Great Awakener because you're waking up to who you truly are. I mean, it's like a revelation. You go, and and everything you see about yourself, in fact, you will have known. I mean, it's not ultimately a revelation, except that somehow you get it. You go,
Yeah.
oh my God, there's something in you that really comes together. And you go, oh, that's who I am. And also, then you also see what is not you and what you don't want in your life. And also, you're awakening very strongly to your own shadow, but you're also awakening to the shadow of the world.
Mhm.
And so you're you may be seeing an awful lot of shit in your own life.
Mhm, mhm.
but also you'll see that in the world. So it can appear as very, very negative at the beginning.
Yeah.
And you know what you don't want. You just know, no, no, no. But what do you really want? And this is how these are the kinds of things that can show up. And of course, it varies from woman to woman and person to person, on how they experience it.
Mhm.
Um, and we can talk about those differences later, why for some it is so hellish and for others, they seem to kind of sail through it in inverted commas. But essentially, it is a massive waking up.
Yeah. Wow. We've spoken of this before, and I was sharing that um, I don't know that women, we learn, at least my experience has been that we know the physiological things that can happen, but we rarely talk about what you're speaking into. And you say that it has the potential to bring us into a place of deep belonging with ourselves and our place in the world.
Mm.
And um, just speak into that a little bit, because I think this is the part that we miss. And many of us call it maybe a midlife crisis, or we just kind of think we're losing it. What is happening, really?
Yeah, I feel very, very strongly about this, Kathy. So much so I feel a bit teary thinking about it, because what is the current story out there about menopause is not attractive.
Mhm,
It's very undignifying. It's actually, I think, somewhat humiliating and really dismissive
mhm,
of an extraordinary intelligence and power that's at work.
mhm.
So to say what I say is very radical, that it brings us into a place of deep belonging within ourselves and with our place in the world. But I firmly believe that is the mission of menopause.
Mhm.
And I'll try and articulate a little bit more by what I mean by that. And also, I want to add that for this to happen, we have to have a whole um, different story around not just menopause. We need to tell a new story about menopause, but that has to sit within the context of telling a whole new story about the menstrual cycle itself. Because menopause doesn't happen out there just as an sort of event that you suddenly bump into one day. It's actually, believe it or not, it's got a backstory which began at your very first bleed.
Right.
And there is a process that is unfolding through your menstruating years that comes to a culmination at menopause. And this process is a process of initiation that is awoken at your menarche, that's your very first bleed. And then each menstrual cycle, you are sort of inducted into something. But no one has that kind of language. People barely have the physiological language, actually,
Right.
Kathy.
I
They barely have that. I mean, how many of us out there, unless we were consciously taught about it, knew about when we were ovulating, could tell, could read. I mean,
Mhm.
that should be 101 for everybody, that you can actually read the signs of when your body is ovulating, and also could then read the signs and know when menstruation is due and not be sort of knocked out by it every month. But
Right.
that, the body is giving very clear signs on that physiological level. That should be 101 for everybody. Oh, men included, actually.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So within that physiological process, that story of, ovulation and menstruation, there is this psycho spiritual journey built into it.
Mhm.
And those emotional changes that you experience in yourself throughout the menstrual month hold meaning. There's a kind of integrated process that's going on that's um, that if you stay connected to, it's like you're being woven down into yourself ever more deeply,
Mhm.
and getting to know yourself. And then menopause really needs to be kind of the cherry on the cake, although that sounds very sweet and lovely, but menopause is meant to challenge a bit. So menopause is the kind of final initiatory moment, and it does pack a punch.
Mhm.
It's meant to, because initiations are like that. But what it does us is it brings us into this place of, as I said, recognition of ourselves. But the key thing here is this acceptance of ourselves. And
Mhm.
if I was to say to every person going through menopause, the one thing you must not come out of menopause without is self-acceptance. That is your mission. You find a way to like who you are and accept who you are. And yes, there'll be loads of bits of you that you think, oh no, I did that, and I really. But you know what? That's part of being human. I mean, I've got some bits of me that I'm not particularly proud of. Who hasn't?
Right.
But it is that we are human beings. We're not meant to be gods or goddesses. We are human, and we have this complexity. And you kind of come into a recognition, a perfect recognition of how that sort of complexity of who you are is perfection.
Mhm.
And and that's and the recognition of that, the self-acceptance of that awakens this feeling of, I know this sounds so simple, like so simplistic almost, but it is such a simple statement. Awakens you, oh, I am okay. Oh my God, I am okay just as I am. And that is the sweetest message of all that our beings need to hear. And in hearing it and feeling it, it's as though we open up this interior space where we go, not only am I okay, but I am meaningful. My life has meaning. I have something to offer life. And what that looks like is going to vary from, with each of us. But each of us is needed on this planet. We're here because we are required. Who we are is important, and so it holds meaning. And it is that thing of self-acceptance and the experience of that meaning that you go, I have a place. I belong, but I belong to myself. That I belong here. I belong to this planet, and it is, dare I say, and I do say it in the book that we've just written, which is coming out in September. We'll come back to that. um, it is for me it's spiritual union. That's what the mission of menopause is. It is to bring us into spiritual union, and that's when I use that phrase. That's belonging. That's
Mhm.
belonging.
Wow. Wow. It's like I can feel in my body when you say, um, that I'm okay. I can feel the opening, the freedom that that gives you to create, that maybe in your 40s you never allowed yourself. And when you hit this spot, it's just like a door opens. Um, but I know there's some pivotal things that need to happen. And before we talk about those, I just want to reiterate one more time, why does menopause disrupt our lives? And why is that important? You kind of alluded to that, but I want to really drive that home for our listeners.
Well, provocatively, I want to say it's meant to disrupt,
Hmm. Hmm.
because it is an initiation, and all initiations require an interruption to the order that exists.
Hmm.
So what an initiation does is it disrupts the place you're in, and basically it disrupts the ego. The ego has to be kind of knocked off its pedestal, because if the ego's in charge, nothing will change.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's all about you. It's kind of narcissism. It's all you get, isn't more narcissism in the world if our egos don't kind of get kind of broken open,
Right.
but not destroyed. This is really important. That egoic force is really healthy and great. I don't want to diminish that. And it's not the whole story.
Right.
And so as an initiation is a kind of disturbance to that. And it's kind of a threat to it's our identity is threatened. It's
Mhm,
like so it's like the illusional bubble we have about ourselves is popped,
mhm,
and then there's this period of time where you're in the unknown, and it feels like the end. It feels like death often.
mhm, mhm,
And initiations come in all sorts of guises. I mean, ill health can be an initiation. The end of what you thought was a loving and great marriage, if that suddenly ends, or you're suddenly fired from a job. These are all, that you weren't expecting, or death. There are many ways we can go through initiations, but there are these where life initiates us, where something happens in life. But these are initiations that are built into our being. It's actually coded into us, so it's very organic. And so for me, that means there's a necessity
yeah.
within us for this. So it disrupts and disturbs, and basically, it exposes the vulnerabilities in our system. The initiations are meant to make us vulnerable. That's the whole point.
Mhm,
So that we become permeable to something bigger. Because you're expanding into something bigger. It's a death and it's a rebirth. And death, as I always like to say, death always feels like death. You don't go, oh, great, a rebirth is coming, a new me is coming, which is really what's happening. We don't think that. We go, oh, shit, it's
mhm,
the end. This is hideous. Oh my God. And it is a life death moment. And this is, I'm going to say something that's a little bit strong here, but I need to name it because it's a very real thing at menopause for some, one or two, but it's rising, is people taking their own lives at this point.
mhm, mhm,
That numbers of, I think it's particularly women, it's women of between 45 and 55, those numbers have risen in recent times.
mhm,
And it's because there is, I say this very deliberately, there is a life death moment because it's the death of the ego. And sometimes, if our sense of self is very vulnerable already, or our life circumstances aren't good, and we are not, and if we're not well supported, resourced, it might be financial resources, it might be emotional resources, all sorts of resources. If we're not resourced, it can feel as though we are abandoned. We are being abandoned by life, and life it can feel very bleak. And so there is this very tentative moment, and I do know that suicidal ideation or thinking about suicide can be very strong. And I have heard of people I know of people, and we share a story in our book. Actually, it's very powerful, and actually very painfully, we know someone who took their lives,
mhm,
and they were going through menopause.
mhm. Wow.
So I say this not to shock or depress,
Mhm,
but to alert to the power of what's happening here. That this is a big negotiation going on in our souls, Kathy, and you really have to choose. You have to choose yourself, and if you don't choose yourself, then it becomes very hard post menopause
mhm,
to live a life without bitterness, regret, or resentments.
right.
I mean, I think those words, bitterness, regret, and so on, I think they're occupational hazards of getting older
Mhm.
that try to get in, and you have to go piss off.
Right, right. Yeah,
Excuse me,
yeah,
I'm not going down that path.
right. Yeah.
But and actually it's actually, I mean, they are there in the field, but it doesn't, it is because I have accepted. I thought, this is who I am, for better or worse. I'm going to make, and this is it, I'm going for it now. um so you really have to choose yourself. So that's the test going through
Mhm,
menopause. But the whole point I'm trying to make here is that initiations are meant to test us.
yeah.
So there is a challenge. And really, when there are very extreme things going on emotionally for people, and it's really a sign of under resourcedness. It's exhaustion.
Yeah.
Exhaustion is huge. That is number one. That's top of my list.
Mhm,
If
mhm.
I could wave a magic wand and wish one thing for people going through and women going through menopause, it is time off to
Yeah.
do sweet FA.
Mhm,
Rest,
mhm,
rest, rest,
mhm.
rest.
Yeah.
That would change everything. So it's exhaustion, and then it's all the usual culprits. This is where all our health issues are exposed,
Right. Mhm,
or even mental health stuff. So if there have been issues in the past, or if you have experienced trauma, or if there's any kind of historical abuse in your system,
mhm,
um, it's as though all these things come to the fore in a way to be healed.
mhm, mhm.
But it does, and in the moment it just feels crap.
Yeah.
It feels not good.
Mhm,
And when there's no language or understanding of initiations surrounding our experience, and when there are no suitable resources and there isn't respect, I mean, the lack of respect for all this, it's
mhm,
changing a bit. I mean, there's huge changes going on in the UK.
mhm.
There's some really good celebrities, that are who are now going through menopause.
Right.
And they're going, no, 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 no. I'm not putting up with this. And they've got a platform and they're using it, and how I salute them, and
Mhm.
so on. So there's good stuff going on. I'm not with them on the kind of remedies that are all being recommended, but I'm not splitting hairs. I am so excited that
Exactly.
that the conversation is going on. So they're actually demanding that this be paid attention to properly within the medical system, because doctors and people, they're not properly trained in this.
Right.
But it is the complete lack of dignifying language around it, especially on this, because it's this huge spiritual opening.
Yeah.
Mm. And if
Yeah.
you don't know about that, then it just feels like shit.
Right.
Mm.
Exactly. So that leads me right into my next question. How can we be prepared to go through this with grace?
Yeah. Well, it is it is connected to menstrual cycling years,
Mhm.
as I said earlier.
Yeah.
So it's about paying attention to your menstrual cycle and practicing what we call menstrual cycle awareness, which is really um, being connected to your cycle, knowing what day of your cycle you're on, and in a sense charting each day. And I'm talking just here about emotionally, the quality of your energy, your emotions, because this is your cycle is an incredible feedback system on your overall health and well-being on all levels.
Yeah.
I mean, the subject of menstrual cycle awareness is huge. And for people who are now curious listening to me, I would really recommend you just go to our website, redschool.net, to get the details on this, because I'm just giving a very light touch description here. Um, but it is to be, um, in a sense, connected to your cycle and using your cycle as a guidance system for yourself, because that's what it is. It's like this inner guidance system. And so when you're connected to your cycle, you're connected to yourself. So what you're doing then is you're pacing your energy and mood throughout the menstrual month,
Mhm.
and you're getting to know yourself, but you're also getting to know your strengths and vulnerabilities. And then when things start to change with the cycle, because in your 40s it can change a bit, especially if you're very stretched and stressed,
Mhm.
you'll notice those changes and go, hang on, I notice I'm getting way more reactive in the premenstrual phase. What's going on here?
Mhm.
Oh, you're probably needing more nourishment. And I
Mhm.
mean nourishment on all levels. Like
Mhm.
you may be needing more rest, tiredness. You're maybe needing more emotional input. You're also needing physical nourishment. So your cycle is telling you about the state of your overall health and
Mhm.
well-being.
Mhm.
And so when you pay attention to the troublesome bits of your cycle, you're you're doing what you should be doing. You're taking care of your health,
Mhm.
and I'm going to use an example of myself here because I used to have horrendous menstrual problems, which is why I got into all this work, starting in my early 30s.
Mhm.
The menstrual pain from hell, as I called it, which was
Right.
endometriosis. And then I had other terrible health problems, terrible insomnia, chronic fatigue, allergies, the usual stuff. Oh, isn't it depressing saying that? far too, far too prevalent. And I thought, I'm not living with this.
Right.
And also with the pain, I thought, I'm not taking drugs or having surgery. My body's talking to me, and I'm listening.
Mhm.
And it took me a long time, but I really, I really worked hard on healing my body. And so by the time I got to my 40s, or really because I healed the pain through my 30s into my early 40s, but in my 40s I was struggling with fatigue and all that, um, and gradually things were improving. It wasn't perfect, let me tell you,
Mhm.
but somehow things got better. But the interesting thing is, by the time I got to menopause, you'd think, oh, I'd have a terrible time at menopause. I didn't know what a hot flush was until I was coming out of my menopause. And that was when I had moved back. I was living in Australia and I'd moved back to the UK. And and I started having one or two when I got back to UK. And I think it was the exhaustion of all that it took, because I'd been in Australia for 25 years, which was huge. I was packing up a lifetime, and giving up my career. I was self-employed as a therapist and psychotherapist and so on. And I realized my body was tired, and that's I get changes in temperature when my adrenals are down.
Right.
That's my adrenals. The problem is not menopause. It's the problem is that I'm exhausted.
Right.
And but I did not have my sleep was actually getting better at this point, when it's not getting worse. I did not have extreme health stuff going on. On the contrary, I had established a very strong self care practice.
Yep.
And I think that is the key. And so, although my menstrual cycle was a challenging process in my 30s, it got me really smart about my health. And I became ruthless about my self care. And and so my journey through menopause was, I mean, everything we write of in the book I encountered, but not as this great. I mean, I'm talking about this sort of psycho-spiritual stuff here, not the physical. The provocation, the need to change everything, because that's what I did. I gave up my whole life in Australia. I didn't want to be a therapist anymore. I just wanted no, 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 it was no to everything. Um, and I had to really face myself, my shadow, all that. It was, it was textbook in that sense. But the difference was I felt prepared for it.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
felt I didn't ever feel the horror of menopause. I did not feel, oh, no, 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 I don't. Well, there is a moment. There is always a moment where you go, oh, no, 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 not menopause. But then, because it's a sign, it's aging, it's a sign of getting older. But there is also something organic. You feel, I actually, to be honest, felt ready for menopause in there. I thought, I've outgrown the cycle. This is a new thing opening up,
Yeah.
and I was ready for it. So it is actually about your self-care, Kathy, to put it
Yeah.
in a nutshell, on all levels. Your diet,
Mhm. Right.
bottom line, it's about getting sufficient rest, and it's about tending to your own needs. So if you have put your needs second to everybody else's, let me tell you, you are going to hear about it in
Mhm.
menopause.
Yeah.
Mm.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up because just through my conversations with you and other study I've done, it to me, menopause feels like that big, wise grandmother part of you finally drops in and says, nope, not gonna do that anymore. It's like we've in our 40s, we parcel out ourselves and our energy to all the people and things we take care of. And then here comes grandmother and she's like, okay, you're done. You're just done with that. And if we fight it, it's like every single time I would eat not appropriately, there would be a hot flash, and no other time. It was like, oh,
No, really? Wow.
know? So, um, how do we, knowing what we know now, make this, take back the respect and the dignity and make this a dignifying moment, even as we're shedding all of the things and pissing people off every which way we
I
go.
know, I know, I know. I just want to acknowledge that beautiful image of this grandmother figure coming in. Yeah, again, no, no, you're not doing that. And the thing I also want to acknowledge is that, of course, here am I talking about resources. You've got to be resourced. And, that's some people just don't have those resources in their lives for whatever reason. And yeah, that they are, and many of us have had children late, so there may still be children at home. And they still need looking after. So we have to be kind of incredibly kind with ourselves.
Yeah.
So I would say that's the first thing that grandmotherly figure does, is doesn't she just to bring this kindness in, this loving kindness with ourselves. Because your question was, how do we change, how do we start to turn this ship around when when there isn't a public conversation, where we don't have allies, where we're not resourced? And the first thing we can do is be kind with ourselves. I think we need a basic vocabulary, and I'm going to promote this new book of ours that Shani and I have written, because it's things like that. And it might be another book or whatever, but I'm going to obviously recommend my book. But we really see our book as a kind of anchor for people to hold on to go, to be able to keep going back to and going, oh, that's right, I'm not going mad. That's very real. And these are all these other stories. So you need allies, and some sort of literature, will can hold you when that's all you've got. And it really, you do need allies, and I think, and it's really only people who go through menopause or post-menopause, women or people, that who are going to get it.
Right.
Yeah, other people are going to get it, partly because you're withdrawing your juice from them and they're going, eek, what's wrong? What's wrong with that? Why? Because they're suddenly being disturbed by you, because you're no longer being the nice, friendly, I'll do it all kind of person.
Right.
And so that, is causing disruption for people around you, and they have to grow up, they have to change. Of course, children, particularly, partners, because we all get into habits of relationship. I'm not condemning anybody here, by the way.
Right.
This is all just normal stuff. And it's human, it's all human, normal human stuff. Um, so everyone is affected by the change. And because there's no languaging around it, no one's, you're seen as the problem.
Right.
So you've got to seek allies. Yeah, really. A community where you can be safe, particularly to have those moments where you need to go, I'm losing. Just to be able to just go, if anyone, I'd like to have a real kind of rage moment, because rage is one of the strongest feelings. One of
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
strongest feelings that come up. Rage and then grief.
Yeah.
So intense. And actually, we need to just let it happen, but it's got to be in safe places, because otherwise people will just think we are mad.
Absolutely.
And losing it. And actually, I want to say we are actually losing it, but I mean that in a good sense. We are waking up to the madness that is our daily lives, everybody's lives, the way we are living life, what we're doing to the planet. That's all madness, not us. That's madness. And your menopause is really going, this is madness, but what you just feel it as madness within you. So yeah, we need safe places that we can go to, and having touch points like, say our book, that will remind us one, that we're not alone, that others experience this. Oh, but also it's meaningful because we put all the in our book we describe these 5 stages of phases of the menopause transition. So all these kind of crazy feelings that come up, we give them a home, a context,
Mhm.
and so we give them meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it makes sense, and that's dignifying.
Yeah.
Mm.
So talk to us about the book. We're all on the edge of our seat now. What
Yes, me too.
what's the name of it? When's it coming out? How can we get it?
All right. So I tell you, this name was a long time coming to obviously D-Day, the 11th hour.
Right?
We're still finalizing the title. Now I've got to remember it. So the main title is Wise Power,
Mm.
and the subtitle is Discover the Liberating Power of Menopause to Awaken Authority, Purpose, and Belonging.
Oh, that's beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Everything we've talked about.
Everything we've talked about, yeah, it's all in there. And it's due out on September the 20th, but you can pre-order it now. It's actually available now to pre-order, which is really exciting. So if you go to wisepowerbook.com,
Perfect.
wisepowerbook.com, you will find it. And if you go onto any bookseller,
Sure.
we won't name names, but if you go to any online site, you will find the book there. So
Okay.
Wise Power, and it's myself and my colleague Shani Hugo
We
Wellison.
so we're going to put the link for both the book and then Red School on the page.
Brilliant.
They can find it on the page that right underneath this video. You also, I took the liberty of offering your free gift that's on your
Yes,
website.
that's
Um,
right.
it's I think, a little 3-part series, Menopause, Reclaim the Dignity and Power. So if people want to learn more about everything we're talking about here and find a community, if you don't have one, this would be a really good place to do that. Um,
Yes, and actually, I should just mention that each year we run Menopause the Great Awakener course. This is a big 6-week thing that we run from the end of October through November,
Neat to know
for
that.
6 weeks, which is, and when you join it, you can rejoin it year after year then. So, because menopause takes a few years, so you can keep dipping back into the course. And actually, it's people who've done it the second and third time, they just get so much out of it.
Right.
We've been going for quite a while with this course, so it's well worked. Yeah, so that's another option for people to come to. Hmm.
So everyone needs to go down and get the free gifts so that you can get on Red School's mailing list, and you can find out about all of that as it becomes available, because that's going to be coming up pretty soon, next quarter probably. So, oh, Alexandra, we did it again. This was
We
so
did
fun.
it, Kathy. I mean, I just love talking to you.
It's just, well, I think too, it's what we talk about. I think we're
Yeah,
kind of, we kind of geek out on this stuff. So,
yeah, we geek out on menopause. It's so cool.
you know, there's worse things. But I thank you
Further.
for sharing your wisdom with us. This has just been a delight.
Well, thank you very much, Kathy. It is same for me too. Yeah.